Hey everybody, I think I've got this PC case built to a point where I can effectively and intelligently talk through the water cooling loop that I've designed for it. So that's what we're going to try to do tonight. But before I get started, a couple things I just want to point out up front. The first being that this is the first custom water loop I've ever done. It's a learning experience for me. I've learned a great deal, but I'm sure there's much more to it. And as I talk through this, you'll probably identify some things that could have been done differently, arguably better, for different reasons. And if you have time and feel like it, I would really appreciate if you'd point those things out to me in the comments, assuming you can do it in a constructive fashion. I love to learn. I love to find the better way, the best way to do things. So if there's something here that, again, it goes against best practices, or there's a logical, rational reason it should be done a different way, there's a better way to do it, please feel free to point that out. But I only engage with constructive criticism. Trolls, gatekeepers, people are just, some people, they just like to shit on what other people are doing for whatever reason. And I don't, I value my time too much to engage with those sorts of people or give them any oxygen at all. So again, if you can keep things constructive and instructive, I value it greatly. And I really appreciate you taking the time to point out whatever expertise you may have on the matter. The other thing, even though this is my first loop, I understand and fully acknowledge that I have way much more cooling hardware on this system than it actually needs. It probably needs a third of what I've got on it to run at acceptable temperatures. And I understand that. But I'm going for a specific aesthetic here. I want this thing to look like an alien engine or power supply. I want it to, have a modular kind of high-tech look to it. So I wound up with a lot more cooling hardware than I actually need. So I just kind of preface that. I understand it's overkill. With those things in mind, I want to step through the components I've got here, how they're hooked up, that sort of thing, and we'll just go through it. So I'm going to zoom in here. Right off the bat, right here on the top, we've got three water reservoirs. They kind of got this double helix. They kind of remind me of the canisters of sarin gas from The Rock. You also kind of have a T-virus double helix kind of look going to them. They're plumbed up in line. This one runs into this one. This one runs into this one. The water from these flows from the top one around to the pump. And it goes from the pump down to the first reservoir, the first radiator. This is a 360 millimeter by 60 millimeter radiator with 6 fans. And it goes from this radiator around to the center radiator, which is a 200 by 200 by 60 millimeter radiator with two 200 millimeter fans on it. And then from the center radiator down to the third and final radiator, which is just the twin sister from the one on the other side. And it goes from there all the way around up through here. We'll talk about this stuff I have in line in a minute. It goes around here, down into the middle, where there will be a motherboard. Right now I just have this placeholder in here that I can play around with while modifying and building on the case without endangering the electronics. And it goes from the CPU water block back around up here to the GPU water block, and from the GPU water block back around to this bottom reservoir. And that's the loop. We've got the pump here, which I've already spoken about. It's just a D5, basically D5 pump rather. You can't see it yet because it's not installed yet, but back here in this gap, I'm going to put a plate and I'm going to mount a ARGB hub to run the lights of the CPU and GPU water blocks. Then each of these reservoirs has a LED stem that goes right up through the middle that'll light up, and those will be run off that hub. Over on this side, still in the category of things you can't see because they're not there yet, we'll have another plate here. I'm going to mount a Aqua Computer Quadro here that'll run water temperature, water flow sensors, and it'll also run the pump. And that'll go right here as soon as I get it installed. And the line that comes up off the last radiator, this eventually gets to the CPU, but before it does, we got our first This is a flow sensor and temperature sensor in one. And then I've got another one on the other side of the loop. So there's another one right here. And I understand that, based on what I've read, that the temperature variance between the two is not going to be that high. But I'm just a data-driven kind of guy, and like I said, I'm doing this as a learning experience. I want to see just what I can figure out. I want to play with the Quadro. I want to play with some gauges in 8 of 64. I need some data points. So we're going to have a before picture with the temperature and an after picture with the temperature, just to see what kind of variance we get under different types of workloads. Let's see how much is actually cooling it from the hot side to the cool side. We've got a couple quick disconnects that I'll talk about in a second. Right here's an inline filter, which will not be in the final loop. Right now I'm just running diagnostics and looking for leaks. And I'm running this in here because, well, if you followed any of the other videos or seen any of the stuff I've posted on social media, you'll know that this project, I actually started this in the summer of 2024. And in September I put it down. And all of these pieces you're looking at literally sat on shelves and dried out and gathered dust for 2 years. Now, when I picked the project back up in July of this year, I flushed everything out. I cleaned everything to the best of my ability. But as I was putting it together, I thought, what if I missed something? What if there's some fittings that had a little bit of corrosion in them? What if there's some stuff in the radiators that gets knocked loose? I didn't get it flushed out and it gets knocked loose when I'm putting everything together. And I just thought, it couldn't hurt anything during the diagnostic phase to put a filter in line and catch anything that might be floating around in the system before it gets to the CPU and GPU water block. But I expect I'll take this out in the final fill. One quick disconnect will remain in line here though. And speaking of those, let's talk about those for a second. I've got one coming off of each of the input and output on the water block for the GPU. And these are not the coolest, sexiest disconnects you can get, but they work, and they were relatively cheap. And when it's all said and done, no one's going to see them anyway, so the looks aren't too much of a concern for me. But the reason they're on the GPU is I wanted to be able to take the entire GPU out, change it out, upgrade it, whatever I needed to do without having to drain the entire loop. So this is a way for me to seal off the loop, take out the GPU without having to drain anything out or fool with that if I don't have to. There'll be one disconnect still in line here when it's all said and done. And there's one over here on the pump right here. Those are there for a similar reason. This case, there's really no nice way to say it. It's just a colossal pain in the ass to do any kind of work on the motherboard inside this case as it sits, especially when you've got huge hands like mine. There's just no room to get in here and do anything. I found the easiest way to do any kind of maintenance or changing out any kind of, change out the memory, change out the CPU, even if some of these headers come unplugged somehow, and I got to get in there and try to plug them back in. The easiest thing to do is pop a couple screws. There's 10 in total, 4 on this side, 4 on this side, and 2 down here. You pop those screws out and this entire top half comes off. This entire shelf, this entire center area with all these reservoirs, the entire top half of the thing, just really more of a third, I guess, but the whole top part comes off. But in order for that to work with the water cooling, there has to be a disconnect on this hose and a disconnect on this hose, which again will allow me, much like the GPU, that should allow me to take the entire top part of this off without draining the loop or having a water mess on my hands anytime I need to change something on the motherboard. So the disconnects are there in an attempt to ease the maintenance and the burden and to some extent future-proof the build. As far as the aesthetics go, I'd mentioned I'm going for a kind of an alien power supply look. That's why we've got the green here. And if you've seen some of the other videos, you see the fans lit up with a kind of a glowing alien green. And I wanted the green tubing. I could have gone with clear tubing and a green coolant, but I'd read about that quite a bit, and a lot of people say that the clear tubing and the color coolant, they tend to break down and gunk up your water blocks faster. And I understand that water cooling is more maintenance, period. In best case scenario, it's going to be more maintenance and more care and feeding than an air-cooled system. But I thought, why have maintenance on top of maintenance? Why worry about things getting gunked up if I don't have to? So I decided just to run deionized water with some protectants and stuff, the corrosion protection, anti-algae, that kind of stuff, and make the tubes green with the sheathing instead. Now, when I was looking at this two and a half years ago, the videos I was watching to learn how to do the sheathing, those guys recommended sheathing from an outfit in Germany. And I couldn't find anything stateside that I liked better. I looked for a good long time, and I just couldn't find anything that suited me. So I ordered this from Germany, which was cool. I mean, it looks great, but the downside is it's from Germany. So if I need more of it, it takes a while. And that became an issue during this build, because as I learned how to do this, I used more of it, learning, lots of trial and error. And I used up more of the sheathing than I thought I would. So I ended up running short in the end. But even so, these ones on the outside here, these long runs between radiators, they turned out really well. I'm really happy with how these worked out. Most of these on the inside look nice too. I've got one back here that I tried 3 times and I never did get it. You can see there where the mesh is distorted. It got twisted and torqued when I was connecting it to the pump. It's a little messed up on the other side too. These bends where they contort back and forth and there's not a lot of room to work, they're harder to do. I tried this 3 times. This was the best looking of the 3. And I was running out of the sheathing, so I just went with it. The other thing to keep in mind is everything in this section here, and everything in this section here, and everything down here in the center section, when it's all said and done, will be completely out of view anyway. They'll be concealed with various panels, caps and whatnot. No one will see. I want it to look as good as it can. I don't want to half-ass anything just because it won't be seen. Like, I'm going to clean up all these cables. Everything will be trussed up nice, because I'm going to see it and I know what it's going to look like, and it'll drive me nuts if it looks bad. But something like this, I can't stop the whole show for a week, 2 weeks waiting on something to come from Germany when it's going to be covered up anyway. Same thing here. I didn't even try to put sheathing on these because I knew the close confines, the way it all connects up, and just, again, my huge hands, I knew there was no way I was getting these to look decent at all. And they were going to be covered up in the end result anyway. So I just connected them and said good enough. So that's about where we are. I said in the earlier, when I first started this, I was talking about how this is running because I'm looking for leaks. When I got everything plumbed up and connected up, I used my little handy dandy Corsair air pump here. You pumped it full of air, and it was losing air at a, well, not an alarming rate, but it was losing air enough to where I knew I had something wasn't watertight. And I went through and I tightened everything up, checked everything out. Everything seemed to be as good as it could get. And I thought, well, I've got a pinch seal or a damaged seal. I've got an O-ring that needs changed out or something. And rather than just try to tear everything apart and go through one thing at a time, I thought, the easiest thing to do is just put water in the damn thing, turn it on, and watch for the drip. So that's what I did. And luckily, it could have been something down in here. I was worried sick there's going to be something that was impossible to get to. It was going to take massive deconstruction to get into it. But it turns out, the best thing would have been to have no leaks at all. But it turns out the leaks, at least, are easy to change, or easy to fix. It's this drain valve, which, as you can see, is leaking pretty steadily. It's a pretty bad leak. And then this one over here, not as much, but there's still a slow leak here. Now, the aggravating thing is there's no good way to flip this thing up on its face perpendicular to the table to have those valves where I can change them out without water leaking all over the place. I'm going to have to drain all of this out to fix those. But I was planning on draining it anyway. I'm going to play around a little bit, test this quick disconnect system to make sure it actually works like I think it does, to allow me to take this top part off. I've not tested that live yet, so that's on the agenda to do while I've still got water in it. And then I'll drain everything out and figure out what in the hell is going on here. If I need to change out the seals, buy something new, figure out what I need to do to fix this. This is kind of a pain in the ass. I've got these valves back here. Just as you can see, the radiators are at weird angles. I've got 3 of them. They're disconnected. Some are higher than others. This one, the drain's actually not at the lowest point. So same thing here. Draining this out is a bit of a challenge, but in general, the idea is just to connect tubes to these, pop these if they weren't leaking, have them drain down into a bucket, just tip the whole thing up 30, 40 degrees and get as much stuff drained out as possible through the back here. And then here on the front, on this front radiator, it's also got a drain. Right now, let's see, it's right here, right there. I just have a plug in it. I did have one of those same quick release pull plug drain valves like are on the back, but then I had this green plug on one side but nothing on the other, and it broke up the symmetry of the case, and it just drove me crazy. So the plan is to drain as much of it as I can, just tip this thing up and let it bleed out the back as much as possible. And then when it's mostly empty, I'll just bring the whole case forward where this is hanging off an edge and just put a bucket under it and just pop that plug and just let the rest of it bleed out the front. And you rock it back and forth as needed to get it emptied out. And that's the plan. So there we are. That's the loop, how it's all put together. Quick disconnects, sensors, braiding, sheathing. I think I covered everything that I wanted to put in the video. I appreciate you taking the time to watch. I hope you enjoyed it. And as I mentioned in the beginning, if you have any wisdom or experience, any expertise to offer to where I could do either modify this one to make it work better or something to keep in mind for future builds, I'd really appreciate you taking the time to drop a comment and let me know. And but if all things go well, I'll have this finished on schedule by the end of the month. I know that only gives me a week and a couple of days, but I think I can get it finished. If I don't get it finished at the end of August, it's going to be mid-September because I have some stuff in the first couple days of September that I can't get away from to work on this. So either it's going to be on time or it's going to be 2 weeks late. I don't know how it's going to go yet, but I think this is probably the last video I'll do before it's finished. The next time I come back around, if things are going as I hope, this will be completely finished. It'll be running, water will be flowing, fans will be turning, lights will be blinking. It'll be 100% operational, completely constructed. And then you can judge for yourself if it looks cool or not. I think it's going to be awesome. I know I'm going to be happy with it. I hope you'll enjoy it too. I'll check in with you then and you can let me know. Thanks.